The crackdown on the Freedom Convoy protesters in Canada hath begun. The police are lining up. There's apparently some kind of SWAT officers on the ground. People are linking arms. People are being arrested. We're seeing videos of live streamers, actually a live stream of a live streamer getting arrested for asking questions of an officer. Videos of police entering people's vehicles and photos of people being carried away. This could be the end, at least for now, of the Freedom Convoy protest in Ottawa. But you know what I find really fascinating in all of this is the mixed messaging, the desperate propaganda. So many articles tried claiming that freedom is actually white supremacist. And then they tried claiming in other articles, this freedom protest isn't even about freedom, because they're trying to throw whatever they can at this movement to shut it down. Now, we've actually got some big news outside of Canada. A U.S. convoy has emerged. We've seen that news. I talked about it a little bit earlier. But now we're hearing that in D.C., they are rescinding leave for officers, telling them to get ready for the Freedom Convoy, which will be arriving in D.C. sometime soon. They're taking it very seriously. And these truckers, well, it's effective. It's very effective. What I find truly fascinating in all of this is once again the tribalist flip-flopping that I got to be honest, it's just the most annoying thing in the world to me, and I give no one a free pass on this. All of these leftists in America who supported Occupy Wall Street, who support obstructing roadways, and screamed when Ron DeSantis was trying to pass that anti-riot bill that would make it a felony to block roadways. They were like, how dare you? Now you get the Freedom Convoy doing just that, and they're like, but they're a bunch of fascists spreading COVID. Shut your mouths. It's another occupation, nonviolent, peaceful demonstration. It's effective, and you're going to cry about it. The double standards, the hypocrisy, nay, the hierarchy of the political infrastructure is obvious to everyone. When it's Black Lives Matter shutting down streets and smashing windows, they get a free pass. When it's a Black Lives Matter activist who is accused of and arrested for trying to assassinate a Jewish Democrat, $100,000 bond, activists raise the money, get him out. Kyle Rittenhouse, not so much, because you're all second-class citizens. But I'll tell you what really bothers me. When Ron DeSantis had the anti-riot bill, and I said we should not make it a felony to block a roadway, conservatives all decried this. Not every single one, obviously, but many did. Some on Timcast IRL to my face saying, no. If you're going to obstruct a roadway and cause economic strife, then you should be charged and you should know the penalties and this should be discouraged. And I said, I disagree. I think there needs to be some kind of gradient between peaceful protest and obstruction, because if you don't allow some kind of pressure on the system, the system will erupt. It'll shatter. The pressure will build up and then you get violence. And that's why I said, those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. There has to be some flexibility in the system. If people feel like their voices are not being heard, they will snap. And that's when everything just breaks. Now what are we seeing? Many conservatives who said you shouldn't be able to block roadways are cheering for this. I simply ask that people be consistent. Now, of course, look, as it often is, my opinion, independent, post-liberal, moderate, conservative, libertarian, there's a tendency there to have supported nonviolent civil disobedience, even among Black Lives Matter. And that's why you and I probably find ourselves in this position. Certainly you can find hypocrisy on the right, but it's institutionalized on the left. The way I often put it, it is the rule for the left to be hypocrites. It is the exception for the right. And of course, we hear people like the other day on Timcast IRL, Stephen Marsh said, yeah, well, you know what? Both sides tell me the exact same thing, that the other side is lying. And no, I'm going to stop you right there. I want to read this news, but let me just stress a few points. Hands up, don't shoot was a lie. Jussie Smollett was a lie. Russiagate was a lie. The Kyle Rittenhouse story was a lie. The Ahmaud Arbery story was a lie. The George Floyd story was a lie. Lie. At a certain point, you have to say they're lying about everything. Now, I don't stand for hypocrisy. I can certainly understand if many conservatives see this and say, you know what? I was wrong about this, and I realize now. I can certainly understand if there are conservatives who say, you know what? I still disagree with blocking roads, but if they're going to do it to us, we're going to do it right back. I'm like, okay, well, reciprocal, conflict or whatever you want to call it, that I understand. If people change their minds upon realizing the effectiveness of the strategy, I'm totally fine with it. But the problem is, while I can certainly look to the right and say, maybe they've realized I was right and many others were right, I look to the left and all of a sudden, are they now realizing conservatives were right? No, of course not. You give them the opportunity, they will go right back to occupying like they've done for the past decade plus. And then as soon as anyone on the right tries to use a similar tactic, they'll scream and cry and they'll all lose their minds. It must be shut down with lies, with smears, with propaganda. Here is a photo. Police confronting demonstrators. Well, let's read the story, at least where we are right now, because as I'm recording this segment, it is all currently ongoing. News will probably change by the time you watch, or even later in the day. So let's read. But before we get started, head over to timcast.com and become a member to help support all of the work we do here at Timcast, from these videos to our great journalists who are writing news every single day to our on-the-ground reporters interviewing people. It is only possible because you guys become members. As a member, you'll get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast. But I implore you not to think of it this way. I know there are a lot of people that only subscribe because they want access to those members-only shows. I can respect that. But I also hope you consider that as a member, that membership you pay is hiring our journalists like Hannah Claire, like Cassandra Fairbanks, like J. Lee Hammond, all of these people writing every day. So we want to make sure the news is available to everybody, but it is only possible if people choose to support it. As a member, effectively, let's call it this: pay what you will for the services we provide. We do have ad revenue as well, but we're eternally grateful for your support. So don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the video. If anything else, if you want to support us, you're unable to financially for whatever reason, feel no obligation. You can simply help out by just sharing articles and sharing this video. Now, let's read about what's happening over at the Freedom Crackdown. The Daily Mail reports Trudeau's trucker crackdown begins. Hundreds of cops backed by armored vehicles and horses start arresting Freedom Convoy protesters in Ottawa and towing their big rigs as they use their powers granted by Emergencies Act. This is insanity. Emergency powers, freezing assets. They're bringing in tow trucks with their license plates removed and their company logos covered up by police symbols. Some have suggested the police have commandeered these vehicles under the Emergencies Act. Do y'all realize what that means? Martial law? Now, it's not necessarily martial law in the truest sense of the term. Martial law literally is when the military supersedes civilian control. Justin Trudeau, you can hate him all you want. He is civilian leadership in Canada. And these are police, so it is not in a legal sense martial law. But colloquially, it is. It's when they rule by decree, without due process, without court orders. That's typically what people mean, authoritarianism. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's extraordinary powers under the Emergencies Act, police have established a no-go zone around the demonstration in Ottawa's core. And on Friday morning, a massive force of cops and a fleet of tow truck drivers began clearing out the convoy's final stronghold. Citing the exceptional circumstances of the police action, Canada's Parliament suspended Friday's debate on Trudeau's emergency powers, sparing the Liberal leader another day of uncomfortable speeches from MPs who fiercely opposed his use of the Draconian Emergencies Act. Think about that. Trudeau, there's going to be a debate in Parliament whether or not he has the authority to do this, and he goes, quick, better use the powers now before I lose them. And then because he does, they say, I guess we don't debate it. He's just allowed to do it. Y'all live in Canada. Y'all that live in Canada. I don't understand you if you're sitting back watching this go down and being like, this is fine. To me, it's absolutely insane. They say the crackdown came after police arrested key leaders of the protest movement on Thursday night. And as rumors of a similar protest convoy headed to the U.S. Capitol prompted D.C. Metro Police to cancel all leave for the next week. It's getting spicy out there. In Ottawa, cops carrying automatic weapons and wearing tactical unit uniforms converged on a line of trucks, campers, and other vehicles parked on Ottawa's snow-covered streets. Police brought a dozen horses to confront protesters backed by an armored vehicle. Let me tell you something, my friends. I have seen this over and over again for a decade. For as long as I've been doing this job, I've personally witnessed this. And I understand why people don't like the crackdown when they're protesting. Now, were this a violent riot, I would understand a police response to arrest people, and I would encourage it. But this is non-violent civil disobedience. What do you get with that? Well, let's be real. They should be arrested. 100%. You think I'm joking? No, I mean it. I support their cause. I support the actions they're taking. But in recognizing that they're engaged in civil disobedience, nonviolent, you get arrests. In fact, one of the leaders who's been arrested has been charged with plotting mischief or something ridiculously petty. You need emergency powers for that? That's insane. Now, I think the government should be negotiating with these individuals and working towards getting rid of these mandates because they're wrong. But I do not believe that simply because there are hundreds or thousands of individuals protesting, they can rule just because they can obstruct. Their point has been made. I think the police are excessive. I think the emergency powers are wrong. I think the seizing of assets is absolutely insane. What should happen is a couple of officers, a small handful, walk up and say, "We get it. You're under arrest." We see this with leftist protests in DC. When Extinction Rebellion engages in linking their arms and chaining their arms together, the cops come in, not like this, and they arrest people. I get it. There's got to be some tolerance for nonviolent civil disobedience. There has to be some effort to remove, and these people, if they want to engage in protest again, should do so. But what we've seen in Canada has been draconian beyond all recognition. The freezing of banks, the threatening to seize people's pets, threatening their children. Yo, you're crossing a line. Or I should say, you crossed it a long time ago. Freezing of assets without court order is the craziest thing I've ever seen. But you know what? They're desperate, they're losing, and they don't know how to handle it. Cops going in and arresting peaceful protesters, in my opinion, should be expected. I have maintained that position for every nonviolent civil disobedience instance we've talked about. Black Lives Matter. Yeah, well, if you're peaceful, you go out there, march, you get arrested. Occupy Wall Street, same thing. Because we say, you didn't engage in violence is a good thing. We're going to give you a slap on the wrist. The news covered your story. We get it. There you go. Now, I hope the best for the protesters. I hope they remain strong. I hope they continue to fight for freedom. I hope they continue to resist. I hope there's some accountability for Trudeau and his abuse of his authority. I seriously do. In fact, if these protesters continue, I would not be surprised, and they have my respect if they do so. They say around 100 cops in green military-style riot gear with black helmets and visors came from the opposite direction wearing gas masks and brandishing tear gas. Guns effectively trapping the protesters between the Chateau Laurier and the Westin Hotel. Riot cops are from Quebec's provincial police force, which has a reputation for tough tactics. One of their tactics is to try and smash their batons against riot shields in rhythm to intimidate during confrontations. What are they called? They got a name. I can't remember the name. I was up in Montreal for some of these protests, and they're like state police or something they call them. What are they called? I can't remember. Do they call them? No, I don't know. They say Daily Mail saw at least 4 people arrested in the initial police surge outside the Westin Hotel. Police tactics appeared to be to pick out specific protesters. So earlier it was reported last night, several of the leaders had been arrested. We're also getting other reports. I want to go through some of the news here. Police are now breaking vehicle windows at gunpoint. They are rolling in busloads of officers and tow trucks without plates on them from trucker Matt McKenzie. Look, I understand if they want to clear out the occupation because it's obstruction. It's you've made your point. When Extinction Rebellion did that with a boat, they get arrested, the boat gets towed. I respect it. If they want to do it here in the US, same thing. If Black Lives Matter wants to stand in the middle of a road and link arms, I'm totally cool with it. In fact, I encourage people who want to engage in nonviolent civil disobedience. As I've stated for Black Lives Matter, though, you should be arrested. As I will say now for the truckers, you should also be arrested. However, the cops shouldn't be smashing windows, shouldn't be beating people, shouldn't be dragging them off, freezing their assets. I think I made my point before. I don't want to repeat myself. But let's talk about where we're at. The Ottawa police says all media who are attending the area, please keep a distance and stay out of police operations for your own safety. Anyone found within areas undergoing enforcement may be subject to arrest. There will be a media availability later at 474 Elgin Street. Wrong. The police should not be doing this. There's a live streamer. His name, I believe, is Zot. He's walking up and he sees some cops and he's like, this is your final warning. You can't go here. And he's like, can I go that way? No, you can't go that way. And he goes, okay. And then another cop walks up and goes, you're under arrest. Wrong. The cops should not be doing that. It's disgusting. And I don't understand why they're so stupid, these police officers. They could have just been like, hey, buddy, we're not going to let you through. You can stand here all day and night. That's it. What's wrong with that? This is what leads to a greater escalation. And now we've got the media reporting that, the U.S. convoy is a foreign influence. Yeah, sure. Check this out. From the Washington Post, the Ottawa trucker convoy is rooted in Canada's settler colonial history. Canada's dark history of public health has a long past of hiding behind politeness. I love this one. Look, as many supporters have Islamophobic and white supremacist views. Oh, heavens. They say that the convoy represents the extension of a strain of Canadian history that has long masked itself behind peacefulness and unity. Settler colonialism. Wow. They say the history of Canadian settler colonialism and public health demonstrates how both overt white supremacist claims and seemingly more internationalistic claims about unity and freedom both enable and erase ongoing harm to marginalized communities. Isn't it amazing how they just make this insane claim? But here's my absolute favorite that's been going viral. The notion of freedom was historically and remains intertwined with whiteness. As historian Tyler Stovall has argued, they have lost their minds. Or I should say, it is a cult. It is a cult that is expanding and growing, but admittedly, I do believe is ultimately losing. And we can see this in the rise of the trucker protest. The right is waking up and saying no to the insanity. But let me walk you through a field of international and Canadian propaganda. As the Washington Post writes, freedom is intertwined with whiteness and white supremacy and blah, blah, blah. Here's the Toronto Star. Convoy shows how the far right has co-opted the concept of freedom. So wait, I thought freedom was always intertwined with whiteness. Now you're saying they've stolen it. So if you've co-opted it, that means freedom used to mean freedom, but now the far right has taken it? How do you reconcile that, huh? It looks like people who have the freedom to seek the dissolution of government and freedom to lay siege in the capital feel they're more hard done by other Canadians. Interesting. Let's read more. CBC. Oh, okay. Why the word freedom is such a useful rallying cry for protesters. The word has become common among far-right groups, experts say. So the left doesn't believe in freedom? Okay, sure. As demonstrations against COVID-19 restrictions continue across Canada, the word freedom is on the lips and placards of many protesters. Often associated with protests and rallies in the U.S., the term has taken hold among protesters who are part of the Freedom Convoy, which rolled into Ottawa in late January. For many, freedom is a malleable term, one that's open to interpretation. It's also a term that has thrived among far-right groups. Okay, so now we've gone back and forth a little bit. Let me ask. Washington Post says it's always been rooted in whiteness and white supremacy. Then Toronto Sun, I believe it was? Toronto Star, sorry. They're saying that, actually they've co-opted it. Now we're going back. CBC is saying that it's become a rallying cry. All right, let's keep playing this game. From Teen Vogue, Canada's Freedom Convoy trucker protests aren't about freedom. Oh, for a second there, I thought they had co-opted freedom, that freedom was always a part of whiteness, and that freedom was their rallying cry. But now I learned, thanks to Teen Vogue, it's not even about freedom in the first place. So the far-right white supremacist Canadian truckers aren't actually embracing the far-right white supremacist idea of freedom. Then what are they protesting? Let's be real here. These are different outlets with different derangements, I suppose you can say, or lies. But it's the thing is, what I see in all these stories trying to manipulate is that they don't actually have anything to say other than trucker bad. So they make it up. Each outlet giving some absurd reason why freedom is bad or by what they're engaging in isn't freedom, because they have no real response to the grievances of the truckers. When they say, don't force me to be medicated, we want freedom. And as you can see, they got, I support freedom. What happens is all of these different outlets desperately tried to find a way to smear the group as either saying freedom is racist, freedom was stolen, freedom has become their rallying cry, a rallying cry for the far right, or they're not really about freedom. It's amazing. And they go on to mention a flurry of false claims, blah, 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 blah. Facebook live streams. We get it. We get it. They are about freedom. That's literally what they're about. The right to choose. You know, I've seen a lot of people that say they're pro-choice, and that includes abortion and it includes vaccine mandates. The government shouldn't have their hand in your medical care. I wonder where the American left is on this issue. Because in Canada, they got universal health care, I suppose. But in the US, they want mandates, the establishment left does, and they're also pro-choice, so you can see the absolute hypocrisy, the double standard. Here we go. What's this one? The Nation. Liberty for whom? The racialized history of freedom. This one's from May 3rd, 2021, so well before the Freedom Convoy. But I bring it up just to show you how the idea of freedom, the left has never enjoyed it. This article is tagged under white supremacy. Absolutely incredible. Oh, here we go. The final star again. Freedom protests are white supremacy in all its glory. You know what? You just don't care. I just don't care anymore. I don't care what they say. I don't care what they accuse. It's all meaningless because we know they lie. We know they're full of it. It's irrelevant to me. Here we go, baby. We got Kyle Sefcik, probably pronouncing that wrong, saying it's official. We start our convoy on February 25th. We have finished the dates, times, routes, pit stops, and have everything ready for the March 1st arrival on the National Mall, D.C. I'll be posting the detailed routes tomorrow. All right. I can only surmise the federal government will do everything in their power to try and stop this. They're going to be starting, I believe, in Barstow, just outside of Los Angeles, and they're going to make their way through the U.S., through Salt Lake City, Denver, Kansas City, St. Louis, Indianapolis, Columbus, Frederick, Maryland. That one I find interesting because that's like 10 minutes from where we live. So the Freedom Convoy should basically be passing through our area. This will be very, very interesting. Now, I said this in an earlier segment. For those on the podcast, you'll hear it afterwards. But we're currently planning how we can have someone embedded and documenting and covering this with. We were thinking live streams, but maybe that's not feasible due to highway internet. So maybe daily dispatches from the convoy with social media posts. We're looking into that, and I think we might actually do it. We really, really want to. I would say we 100% want to do it. We're 99% sure we can. So, in all likelihood, we'll probably have someone just cruise alongside or behind the convoy and then just document it, write about it, produce videos, and I think it'll be absolutely fascinating to see. Of course, over in D.C., they are preparing for the worst. The Daily Mail reports Washington, D.C. police cancel all leave for next week over Ottawa-inspired freedom convoy that is heading towards the Capitol. D.C. police have nixed officers' leave over the next week to prepare for the convoy. According to insiders with the D.C. police, the department is currently mobilizing hundreds of its officers to spearhead a large response plan against truck convoys across the nation, poised to travel to the U.S. Capitol next week in support of vaccine mandate protests started in Canada late last month. Next week, according to the outlet, forces of 500 officers each day will be formed to comprise civil disturbance units set to quell the planned demonstrations if needed. Protests in Canada have remained largely peaceful, with Liberal Prime Minister Justin Trudeau blasted as an authoritarian for his attempts to stomp out the protests and stop them from being funded. It's difficult. I like the Freedom Convoy. I really, really do, and I support them. But I certainly still believe in law and order. Within reason, I think corruption is bad, and I think law could sometimes and is often amoral. The law in New Jersey is to arrest people who have guns. You know, the Constitution says you have a right to do so. The law is wrong. The Constitution, the supreme law, is correct. So sometimes statutory law is broken. And just because it's legal doesn't mean it's moral. That being said, when it comes to truckers coming into D.C., I respect their plans, their protest. It's going to generate some attention in opposition to mandates. Mandates, many of which are already being repealed, probably because they're scared of what could come. And that being said, I think if you occupy roadways and block and obstruct streets, you should be arrested. Now, following that, I don't think they should have their vehicles seized or there should be heavy fines. I think it should be a slap on the wrist and carry on your merry way. If you continue to do so, we'll escalate. We respect people's right to protest, to be a little bit of a nuisance, because we don't want people fighting and being violent. Now, here's what I think will happen. I think the DC police will overreact like they're doing in Canada. This will lead to outrage, which will escalate things. See, that's the problem with the Canadian response. Trudeau's an idiot. The cops should have come in immediately and should have said, your protest has been heard. You're being given a warning. Here's the amount of time you have to leave. They then should have come in and issued warrants for the arrest. Like, look, I don't like that people who are standing up for freedom get arrested. I don't. But I certainly think there's a threshold we have to tolerate and that we can't tolerate. When they arrested the organizer in Canada and she's being charged with like mischief or whatever, I'm like, okay, look, it is what it is. I am not an anarchist. I'm just like what do they call me? Lib center, libertarian centrist. And that means we need sustained pressure. And that's great what we get with these convoys. And that's true for the left when they want what they want as well, so long as they don't engage in violence. If you are not being heard, you protest more. But I tell you this, my friends, the most important thing you can do, the primaries are starting soon. This is fantastic. So I would actually argue this. If there's one thing the DC convoy could do, is make sure one of the key points of your message is that you want to build awareness for people to vote in the primaries. Kevin McCarthy's, the Lindsey Graham's, the Mitch McConnell's, primary any and all of them. And the Democratic establishment as well. A big key point of the message, because you're going to get a lot of press attention for this DC convoy, should be to tell people, vote in local elections, vote in primary elections, and get a new Congress in. Now, unfortunately, I know a lot of people coming, they probably don't believe in the system. But I assure you, man, there is a game being played, and it's a game you can win. And the Democratic establishment and uniparty Republicans win when you feel you cannot win. So I tell you this, stage your protest. Obstruct the streets, do what you can peacefully, nonviolent civil disobedience, all of that good stuff, whatever you can, because we tolerate only so much, and we tolerate a decent amount. But make sure you get a strong message across. And what is your message? An end to the vaccine mandates? We're actually starting to see those falter. What else do we want? We want to build awareness. We want people to go out there and vote out the establishment. We want people to challenge the narratives. We want people to wake up. It's a huge opportunity. I don't know. I assume many of you, there may be many people who comment saying they shouldn't be arrested, they should keep protesting and it's wrong and all that stuff. My question is, when we're navigating these things, how do we tolerate this? Do we say that if several hundred people block the roads around DC, they get what they want? I think the answer is no. Otherwise, Black Lives Matter would have overhauled the government, overnight. I'm not a fan of that. But I'm certainly a fan of, after George Floyd died in Portland, a bunch of people laid down on a bridge with their hands behind their back. And I said, that's fantastic. We saw the press about it. We saw you were angry about it. It generated awareness for your cause. Nobody got hurt. Everybody got up and left. When they block roadways with a boat, I say the exact same thing, and then you get arrested and your boat gets towed. There it is. You get your attention. Polls show that it works. Nonviolent civil disobedience. Now, you want to know where the true success is? Consistency, consistent pressure. If they come and they say, you're out, find ways to just keep the pressure up and let the politicians know you will not back down. Keep building awareness, keep spreading the word, keep generating press, and encourage people to vote out these incumbents. Let me just tell you guys, man, the primary is the key. And I think we already have some primaries are coming up very soon. So check your local listings, figure out when your primary elections are, and research the candidates and make sure you're getting rid of these establishment politicians. Because look at what AOC was able to pull off. She's out of her mind, in my opinion. I think she's terrible. But she pulled it off, and I respect her for it. The fact that she was a bartender, she runs for office in the primary and wins, that's it. That's how you do it. And now the squad commands a decent amount of power among the Democratic Party. Granted, they mostly fall in line, but they do apply pressure, and it works. The right needs to do the same thing. Populists, America First types, nationalists. I'm not a staunch nationalist, But I certainly believe you must secure your own face mask before securing the mask of your neighbor. That's what they tell us on airplanes. So the reality is I'm all for foreign aid and trade, but we got to make sure we clean our own rooms before we try changing the world. So look, what's coming to DC will be fantastic in my opinion. The police are getting prepared for it. The truckers should be as well. I don't know. I'm not going to tell the truckers what they have to or, anything like that. Far be it from me, man. We're going to cover it. We're going to see what you guys have to say. But I think one of the most important messages is to vote out the incumbents and primary Republicans and Democrats alike. That's just my opinion. Because look, there are some gains. The trucker protest, I think it worked. A bunch of these mandates get removed, and they don't want to admit it was because of the truckers, but it was. Come on. They know they're losing. For Democrats across the country, they're starting to pull back on these mandates, and they see what's coming. They see the polls and they see the protests, so they're panicking. So now, with a protest like this, whatever y'all end up doing, you got to think about what do you want to accomplish with it. I think the truckers who come out here will finish off the mandates. I think the Democrats know it's bad news. And I also think there's an opportunity for messaging. And boy, I just want to stress 1,000,001 times, primaries. If every single person brought their friends, their brother, their sister, their family, whatever, to go vote in the primaries, we would be rid of these corporate garbage politicians. And imagine if you had 100 Rand Pauls and Thomas Masseys and Marjorie Taylor Greens. Oh, I know you may not agree with them, but they go in. They challenge the system. They make sure people are doing their jobs in Congress. I'd love to see it. Absolutely. So, look, far be it from me again to say what the DC convoy is going to be about. They do their thing, and we'll try and cover it, but we'll see how it plays out. In the long run, victory. I think with the truckers being cleared out, what you just need to understand is as bad as it was what Trudeau did, they pulled their mask off. They're fascists. It's bad for them. Even Vaush and leftists came out and said, this is insane what they're doing, freezing bank accounts. We can't stand for that. They took a massive hit to their credibility. The truckers accomplished this. I hope y'all realize the convoy couldn't have lasted forever. I think they've won. And now the police have no choice but to go to an extreme degree to get rid of them. And once again, it just exposes them, exposes the emperor as having no clothes. So good luck to the truckers up in Canada. Stay safe, everybody, and we'll see how this plays out. Next segment's coming up tonight at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimCastIRL. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all then.